the way back in January, I headed to Prague, a city I've always imagined to be great for shooting on film, with its historical architecture and busy streets. So I packed my Mamiya NC1000S, a couple of rolls of film, and for once boarded a plane at a reasonable time of the day. The first couple of shots I took in Prague were the last on a roll of Kodak Gold I already had in the Mamiya. Naturally, the first shot was of a tram, as I just can't help myself when it comes to trams and photography. The last shot on this roll did get a bit of a blue line through it, which I think was from the airport x-rays. Not one of my best shots though, so not too much harm done. During one of the many necessary coffee stops on this trip, I loaded up the Mamiya with a roll of Fujifilm 200, and starting in Prague's Old Town, I took the first few shots on the roll. These turned out pretty average, and at this point I was just feeling a lack of inspiration, with the conditions being pretty bleak. Thankfully, the remaining shots of the day were an improvement, and these shots of a Vespa down a side street actually turned out to be some of my favourite from the trip. The cream tones of the Vespa against the red building, with the slight glow from the windows, everything in the shot just comes together to make exactly the type of shot I love taking on film. Yet another tram shot, but I'm happy with how this one turned out. The trams in Prague have such a cool vintage look to them, it's like they were made to be shot on film. This shot also has several leading lines, which is always a plus point for me. Day one ended with a pretty chilled evening where a train brought me a burger and a round of glow-in-the-dark crazy golf, which of course I won, before a slightly more hectic second day in Prague. The first shot of day two is okay. You can see what I was going for here with the bench between the two trees, but again this day started out with pretty bleak conditions. I actually like this shot of Prague Castle a lot. The orange tones of the buildings below stand out nicely in an otherwise fairly monotone shot. It's just a shame about the completely grey sky, as some clouds would have added some depth. So here I took two shots with the same composition but with completely different styles, and honestly I'm pretty happy with both. The first shot gives a really nice sense of speed, with the tram rushing past at a slow shutter speed, even if that did result in everything looking out of focus. The second shot I feel could have been improved if I just waited for someone to walk through the frame, but I love the slight green tint around the edge of the shot. This is my favourite shot from the morning on Charles Bridge. You can shoot pretty much any of the statues on the bridge and get a dramatic shot, but the composition here, with the statue in the foreground, the bird on its head, and the castle looming in the background, all tie together really nicely. I love how the red and gold really stand out against the foggy background, and although again I feel some clouds would have improved it, I'm still very happy with this shot. After a quick ride on Prague's funicular railway, we climbed 299 steps to the top of Petrin Tower, where I didn't actually take any shots on the Mamiya, as I was mostly trying to focus on not looking down from 208 feet up. But once my feet were firmly back on the ground, I did get a couple of nice shots from below, as the day was finally starting to brighten up. Prague Castle, I made the most of the first decent bit of light we'd had on the trip, with a few more shots around the massive castle complex. This was my favourite shot from Prague Castle. I love the gold tones and the nice mix of light and shadow. Overall, this shot just makes me wish we'd got more of this kind of light on the trip, as it's a glimpse of what kind of shots you can get with Fuji 200. But at least I know what to aim for when I finally use the second roll that's been sat in my fridge for 6 months. We ended day 2 watching the Sparta Prague ice hockey team, which was a pretty cool experience, even if there were no fights on the rink. Followed by going to a horror movie themed bar, complete with life-size statues of horror characters and themed cocktails. The final day in Prague started with a visit to the top of the Charles Bridge Tower on the old town side. The top of the tower was perfect for shots of Prague Castle and the Charles Bridge, and its design gives some pretty good natural framing opportunities, which I made full use of in this shot of the castle. So the final tram shot of the trip was this overhead shot from the tower, and one I'm really happy with. The bright red of the tram stands out amongst an otherwise very neutral scene, and the people below add some life to the shot. My final film shots in Prague were all taken at the Great Strahov Stadium, a semi-abandoned sports stadium that's still used as a training facility for Sparta Prague. However, everything around the pristine training pitches is in a state of disrepair. This makes it absolutely perfect to shoot on film, and I think my biggest regret from the trip is that I didn't shoot more here. This is exactly the kind of shot I love taking on film, long shadows mixed with harsh light in an almost abandoned location. After finishing the Fuji 200, I loaded up a roll of Dracula 35, a black and white film with a speed of 65 ISO. As there's no 65 option for ISO on the Mamiya, I very slightly underexposed at 50, though I didn't mention this to the lab in development, so I'm not sure if it'll have made a difference. I only took 2 shots on the Dracula, both of which were inside the stadium, but both are easily 2 of my best shots from Prague. These shots have such a strange, eerie feel to them, with the shadows being extremely dark and the highlights being extremely bright. Both shots have a really cool contrast to them. Black and white was definitely a good choice for the stadium. I just wish I got a few more shots here. After 3 days spanning 3 different rolls of film, I got a decent amount of shots that I was happy with. Prague is a city that I'd love to return to in winter again when it's covered in snow, but unfortunately that is just quite difficult to plan. So the roll of Dracula 35 that I loaded up right at the end actually ended up taking me all the way from January to August to finish. I've just been quite slow with shooting on film this year, but I did get some really nice shots on that roll, so I'm going to cover that in an upcoming video. So please keep an eye out for that, and I'll see you next time.